Let's try that. Pretty loud. Sabbath school. Notice the part that says school. I'm going to try and teach you, show you something. But before we dare take a step, let's talk to our Father. Heavenly Father, we thank you for existence, for peace, for life, for the ability to know you. Your presence in our lives and here today is why we have life. Without you, there is nothing. And as you pull away, it is emptier still. Therefore, Father, we ask you to be with us in our minds, our hearts. Help us to have the courage to throw away everything that is not of you. In your holy name, amen. Well, it has been quite a week. You know me, I'm up here talking about the gospel. That's all I care about. I seek assurance. I want to know my Father. I believe that is why He died and why we are created. But somewhere in the middle of this, Satan has got us spinning off out of control somewhere. And what do we have for a life mainly? We are struggling to take care of ourselves and to provide. The scar tissue is so bad that we barely believe. We barely let ourselves have time to go look at something more because we're afraid. The famous study that showed that 70% of all Christians, including Seventh-day Adventists, don't have assurance really shocked me when I first heard about it. I want to advance this one. Okay. And yet it explained my own lack of connection with my Father. So I gravitated to people who were willing to talk about it and who had something to say about it so that I could see it and evaluate it for myself. And as that search intensified, I cared about little else in truth. So I decided to follow. Something actually triggered this. This is essentially the great controversy. But the idea is that since the very beginning, there's been those four things. 2 thrones, 2 religions, 2 wars. 2 resurrections even. And something happened. It wasn't until I actually understood the gospel, and that never even came clear for me. I'm 57, coming 58, and I didn't get it till this last August. I never fully saw it. I have no idea why that is. Is it because I didn't allow it, or because I didn't see it? See, this happened to me. And it's happened to you. And it's happened to members, and it's currently going on in our church now. We have some who are so pushed down that they can't hardly take it. And to be honest, what our response sometimes is we pull away because we don't know how to deal with them. We don't want to offend them. We don't know how to reach out and touch them. And it's fear at the core. And it's all the garbage that Satan has surrounded us with us. Presses us down, and it gives us scar tissue, this world does. Pure and simple. So is there an answer? That's what I search for. This quote is particularly meaningful because a lot of times this was written by one of the founders of our church. In the opening of the great controversy, Satan had declared that the law of God could not be obeyed and that justice was inconsistent with mercy. And that should the law be broken, it would be impossible for the sinner to be pardoned. We look at that and we stumble over a lot of what she said because she saw the gospel and knew it was, and until you get the gospel, that doesn't make sense. So what is our response as Christians? We try and live right. We try and do all the right things. And it'll never work. Not the way God intended until we meet the guy who fixes this problem. A personal relationship, full assurance. In other words, His presence. When you know Him, then everything else falls into place, including all our doctrines. Our walk with Him is dictated by Him, and we lovingly respond. Until we meet the King personally, it'll never happen. Not to the extent that He desires and has desired for 129 years. And for those of you who are watching on YouTube, you can talk to an Adventist to why that is. God gave this church something very, very special. He took the things in that book and opened them up and showed Himself in them. We do them because we love Him. But a bigger part of that we don't realize sometimes is that one of the reasons why there's codes for living is because it takes you back off of the middle ground where Satan and Christ are competing for you. When you do those things, it limits your exposure to Lucifer. And in this world, Lucifer is competing incredibly tough because he sees clearly that he's going down. God is going to pull away from him and his life will cease to exist. So about this statement, justice was inconsistent with mercy, you have to think about what she wrote for a while. You know why that is true? And this is all just my opinion. Satan had left the Father. He was thrown out of heaven. He deceives humans, and then he says to God, if you're going to kill me or leave me, you have to leave your kids. If you're going to love them, then you have to love me too and keep me in existence. That's really what that's saying, in my opinion. So in all your dealings with evil and doubt and disbelief, you're nothing more than a human shield. You mean absolutely nothing to Satan and absolutely everything to your Father. That distinction has to be drawn completely clearly in our lives. The things that we have doubt about and the things that we know, and some we're powerless to not do, you have to at least go in with a warning knowing that this is not good. This is being used against me. So what do you do in those situations? You got to turn to your Father. It's His ability alone that can transform us, not us. Our effort is 1% maybe in that effort. And that effort involves simply going to Him and asking Him for help and clinging to Him. You cannot change yourself. Of yourselves, you can do nothing. I used to think it was, I had to try harder. Well, guess what? I've got 57 years of failure. I want something to replace that. I found something. January 20, 1890. What did Satan say about God, which is sometimes what we still fall into? He was severe, exacting, revengeful, arbitrary. He would take pleasure in the sufferings of his creatures. The very attributes that belong to the character of Satan, the evil one represented as belonging to the character of God. Good grief. You know what? I've been guilty of falling into that. I'm a little bit afraid of God. I don't think sometimes He's going to answer. I don't think sometimes that I can have a relationship with Him, and it's all a lie. And it has been for a long time. Acts of the Apostles, 583. Subjects to John, subjects of vast importance were presented to John, so that the people of God living in his age and in future ages, that's you and I, might have an intelligent understanding of the perils and conflicts before them. God opened it for us. So here I started searching down through the ages, looking at something, because I've For 30 years, I've been poking around in the fringes, and I'm particularly intrigued with the ancient Egyptians. What I found there shocked me, but it wasn't until I saw the gospel that I saw what Satan was up to with all the ancient races. It was pure Lucifer worship, but disguised very, very well, and he offered them something. He told them that he was the Christ and that other guy, he was the imposter. And Satan mimicked a whole bunch of stuff ahead of time. He obviously knew his father. There's more going on here than meets the eye. The pyramids weren't burial chambers. They were send-off places to the sky so that you can have immortal life. And we'll talk about that next time, because you got to see this. When I saw it, I was just stunned. We have experts, so-called experts now, who are looking back 3,000 years and trying to figure out what in the world they were doing. If you don't know Christ and the plan of salvation, it makes very little sense. But this was a complete system of people trying to save themselves through their king, and it was completely based on Lucifer. Tammuz, the sun, Semiramis, the mother, wife of Nimrod. Worship of mother and son has continued down to our day. This is an outline of Orion. It represents Nimrod. To the left, the other constellation is Isis, which was Semiramis. And through the middle runs actually the Milky Way galaxy. So one of the things that in Lucifer's worship is, and here's the little kicker, that someday Lucifer is going to cross the Milky Way and come here. It's built into their system. Back after the flood, he already prepped people for his return. It's shocking. How did he know? This is a picture, all these different languages. There are at least 16 or 18 there that all talk about the sun, and it continues all the way down. This is a representative of Satan. It's his earthly form. This came from a fairly recent movie. I found it, took a picture off the TV screen. This is the representation of the Holy of Holies. You wouldn't recognize it unless you were a Christian. But you have two angels on each side and a throne in the middle, and notice that the incense, which we know is in front of the veil between the two, in this case is behind. It's rather interesting because Christ wants us to come to him, and it's his prayers, our prayers, that he treasures the most, but Satan stands in front of those prayers in that throne. And the two angels on each side, which is like the Ark of the Covenant, those are Horus the hot god, which is Tammuz, the sun, worshiping Satan. It goes on, and it infiltrates all parts of our society to this very day. And as Christians, we're a lot oblivious to it, but I can tell you it's out there, it's active, and it's incredibly real. This is the very first, after the flood, all the people that we think of as gods, like Zeus and all the fables and stuff, really are the sons and daughters and grandchildren of Noah that are represented as those gods. They got together at Heliopolis, which is just to the right of the Nile Delta when you look at the map. This place, this temple, is called Atum Ra. It's the first temple of worship of the sun god. And here it is said that Isis, Ishtar, it's where we get our Easter, she rose from the water, self-existent, like God. This is actually Nimrod's wife, who had grown into legend. And they recorded all the knowledge that was before the flood. All the languages, what the conditions were like, the technology. And here's another little shocker. If you think that before the flood, man was running around in skins, think again. There is so much evidence out there that shows that they were probably as advanced or more advanced than we are. And one of the reasons for that is in two places in Africa. One is in the Sudan and one is in South Africa near the tip. In the rock strata, they find elements that are only produced in nuclear reactors. not kidding. The conclusion is that could you have had a society before the flood that is just like us? It's entirely possible. And they have defined the boundaries. They're in ovals. It looks like wind blew radioactive decay, and it got somehow incorporated into the mud and pressed during the flood. And there is a ton of other stuff suggesting, not proving, but suggesting that they were like us, and probably more advanced. These symbols that are found on ancient Sumerian stuff are still found on the Pope. There's a fish symbol with a cross up on his hat, and over here you have all these representations of fishes. And above this particular one, you can't quite see it here. There's a cross up here. Fish god, 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 fish god. Kind of a fish god. Ancient symbol of the cross. It represented something else. It actually meant soul or sun worship, and it also was the Roman numeral shorthand later on for something that sounded like soul or helios or sun. It's the garments of the sun god. And here, this is the last one. We can talk a lot about this, but I don't want to go there. This is a patch from the NRO. There are groups of people that go around and collect, trying to find into the secret things that our government is doing. And one of the things that they do is they've discovered that these projects, these people have certain needs. So what these people do is go to it and find these little circular things. This is from the National Reconnaissance Office. This patch is only about 4 years old. The symbol that you can't see in the upper left says, "We rule the night." And in the middle you have a dragon holding the earth, and its wings are the U.S. flag. You could look at that one way or the other, but I leave that up to you. It's funny that you choose a dragon, don't you think? The truth of it is as you study all of this stuff, you become convinced that it's an overwhelming thing. One, until we fully know what the gospel is, how are we going to take it to the world? And number two, even if you do get it, how are you going to take it? There's an answer. And that answer is this. In Revelation 10:3, the little book that started our 2300-day prophecy, the Lamb was the only one who was able to open it. Why is that? Because he's the only one who's walked this path and knows how miserable hard it is here, how discouraging it is. He's the only one qualified, because anybody who does it outside of that has never felt our pain. But Jesus did. And he knew when it was time. So he comes down to the earth. John sees this, and he stamps one foot on the ground, on the land, and the other foot on the sea, and he lets out a thunderous roar. 7 thunders follow this. This is his answer to all of this garbage. So the first thing, and Phil, you might have other answers for this, but the first thing that came into my mind when I'm thinking of this, Christ bringing this message to stand up against the whole mess of Lucifer worship in all its various forms, it's got to be God's power. And the first thing that I thought of when I thought of the 7 thunders is, remember when Israel went, they're going to take over, go into Jordan, or they sent spies into the land. And the spies came back and they're discouraged. And why were they so discouraged? Why did they say no, even though it's the presence of God with them? And this has applications for us. The reason why they failed is because they thought they had to help God. God's original message to them was, you guys don't have to do it. You have to follow, you have to lead, you have to do a few things, but I'm going to drive them out ahead of you with hornets and hail. He didn't require their help. His power would have been fully sufficient, would it not? That is the message I think that our church has missed. He's brought us to this again, and I think what he said in 1888 is, guys, you just have to believe. It's going to be my power, not yours. I require a few things of you, but it's mainly that you walk with me, and here's how you do it. So, let's talk for a minute Here's the deal. We all wish that we could meet God, because I've started to understand that in His presence everything works. All the blessings that you have, when your life goes right, it's because of Him. As He withdraws from your life, He's trying to show you something. With me, it all works. Without me, it doesn't. Period. What do you do with your sins? What do you do with your doubt? What do I do with 57 years of unbelief? I have to finally understand that He died for me, that I am saved. I do choose Him, but I still have a mental block. And that block was that I didn't understand that I could go to Him with everything. Everything. And that I was forgiven. Now we can talk about that all day, but I want to show you a video of someone who had an experience that I recognized the truth in it. He's a Muslim freedom fighter, and his life wasn't pretty. But something happened to him, and I want you to watch and see what that is. If you're ready, Les.
City called Abadan, born in a Muslim family, Shiite Muslim family. My grandfather was a Muslim leader, and he had 19 children, and out of 19 children, he had 84 grandchildren. And obviously, he had to choose one to carry the spiritual pattern of the life and the teachings for the next generation. I was born in the southern part of Iran, a city called Abadan, born in a Muslim family, Shiite Muslim family. My grandfather was a Muslim leader, and he had 19 children, and out of 19 children, he had 84 grandchildren. And obviously, he had to choose one to carry the spiritual pattern of the life and the teachings for the next generation.
Probably go ahead to about the 10-minute mark. I'm going to tell you what happens to him. It is a profound thing. He goes through, as a freedom fighter, he murders people. He beheads people. He has, in his experience with God, his God, sometimes he sees a force, sometimes that he'll feel an impression to not go there, and it saves his life. A lot of really strange things happen. He ends up going to Malaysia, and he gets thrown in jail because he has 30 passports, and he's embarking on more terrorist activities. He gets thrown in jail. He decides to do what he only knows, to make the best use of his time, is to teach the Quran to people. He became more and more aware that his life was incredibly empty, and there was a point where he felt a presence in his room that was so demonic, and he knew it was an extension of these things that had happened to him. These visible guidance things. And it was pressing in on him, and he knew he was going to die. And he cries out. He has this voice in his head that says, "Call to God." And so he doesn't know why he did it. He talks about it. He says, "I called out to Jesus, to the one true God." And he knew. He thought the Christians were misguided. They were fully... No, we won't go there. And as time goes on, he is confused now. Now he knows that this force, this presence in his life, that had tried to kill him is not right, and yet he believes that there's one true God. And he decides to leave Muslim. He says, God, wherever you are, I don't want any more. He just decides to walk away. And when he decided that, there was a light appeared in his cell and a presence. And he immediately recognized it for righteous and holy and pure and good. And his sense of sin, in comparison to that, was so overwhelming that he could feel the life draining out of him. And he cries, God, forgive me. And what he emphasizes is these two sides, this purity of this presence that was there. It was infinite, it was peace, it was unbroken, it was pure. And everything that he had rose up in front of him. It kind of reminds you of when Jacob was wrestling with God. And he cries out, please forgive me. And he senses this presence coming over to him and touching his shoulder and says, I forgive you. And he said at that moment, when the connection was established, he felt his sin go away. He still had knowledge of everything he did, but finally, for the first time in his life, he had peace. And not only that, a whole bunch of other things flowed into him. It's powerful to watch. One of the things that happened afterwards is he stayed like that for quite a while. And he slowly raises up his head, and he said, when I looked, he goes, I see people from all different times and from all different lands. And he said they're all sinners. They were just like me. And so he's taking that in. And this voice says to him, how easy did I forgive you? He said in Farsi, which is one of his languages, we have a saying, as easy as drinking water. He goes, no, Lord, more easy than that. He goes, yes. And as he sees all these people, he goes, they all need to know too. They need to experience me. He goes, who will go? Who will I send? And he goes, send me. So he's been doing that for, I think it's something like 16 years. Telling everybody. He just doesn't care anymore about all the other things. He wants people to know that he met God. In watching that, I watched it with my wife, and we were both, it's profound to watch. I recognized his reaction in that. I know two people that have had experiences like that. Not as profound as that, but when you see it, you recognize it, you know. So that brings us back to where we started. I think that this isn't so much about us doing something to please God. It's about letting Him in, letting that presence come to us. I don't know more than that because I'm still searching. I'm still walking every day. But I think our Heavenly Father wants that connection with each one of us. When He comes, it heals everything. It takes away the pain. The members who are lowest in our church are suffering the heaviest load that can barely walk every day. I think Jesus can heal them. And wasn't He making that point in the Gospels? He reached out and either touched or said something. They were healed. Isn't that really what the gospel is all about? Isn't that what God has desired of us since the very beginning? That close connection is what He had with His children, Adam and Eve in the garden. I think He wants us to go back there. Which is why, for instance, in the book Confrontation, Mrs. White makes, I think it's the second last chapter, about 2/3 of the way through. She says one of the reasons why we've kind of stagnated is because we never really learned to rely on Him. And I was troubled by that for a long time until I started to see maybe what she was really saying. She's really saying what your role, just like Israelites went into Canaan, you have to let God do it. You have to let Him come into your life. You have to invite Him. You have to focus on Him. That has to become bigger and bigger and bigger in your life. More and more time. It's not up to you. It's Him healing him. You just have to follow. I pray for that day. I think it's here. So in your travels this week, today, spend quiet time with Him. Shut off everything else. Just go there. When you're done talking, don't hang up the phone. Just stay. Because isn't that what it's all about? Let Him come when He wants to come and when He knows. He'll fix everything. I think He'll take care of it. And I would be honored if He would, for all of us. Let's bow our heads. Father, we see that you really are as good as you say you are, that you really are love. Sometimes you let us see the ugly so that we know the difference between ugly and beautiful, and then we want to come to you. I pray for all my family, Father, all those I know. I know that there are people watching this on YouTube specifically this morning who have such a huge weight in their life. They struggle. We all struggle. But I know this, that your presence brings healing. You have to invade us, Father. You have to take over. That's what's broken. That's what's always been broken since Satan started this war, this rebellion of his. I choose you today, Father. We choose you. We say thank you. In your holy name.